Love often takes unexpected twists and turns, but that just makes the story more interesting.
My eye caught her, and that was it.
Oh my goodness, I think I'm falling in love with this boy.
I told my husband, if you marry me, you're going to laugh for the rest of your life.
Join us as we continue to bring to life the Canadian love stories of romance, family, friends, and community.
Well, love is the most important thing.
I look at a room and I see beauty, and that's a little silly to say or to hear because, I'm looking at a hoarder's house, but I see the beauty behind it and what it can be. I don't think that it's right to watch people suffer and struggle when you have the ability to help. Like, it took 2 days of my time to change the entire life of a whole family, not just one person, right? I can't imagine what the world would be like if at least half the people out there did something like that.
Hey everybody, it's Nancy here. Welcome to the Canadian Love Map podcast. I'm here with Madison, who gets 5 stars for the incredible guest she found this week. And do you want to tell us about her, Madison?
Yes. So Brogan is a TikToker and a very good one at that. I've followed her for years and just recently found out she was Canadian and knew she had to be on our show for sure.
So not only does she have millions of followers for her cleaning tips and her motivation, but she actually goes out and cleans people's homes. And I'm talking the absolute most challenging of cleaning jobs. And she does it for free.
Yeah, Brogan has traveled all over the world for this, and she is just one of the most humble people I've ever met, for sure.
So her story is about cleaning, but it's about so much more.
Yeah, and I'm going to go actually clean right now.
Yeah.
So
me too.
We'll go get into that.
Okay, let's do this. Hey, Brogan, welcome to the Canadian Love Map podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
My house may need you.
I'm on my way.
Do people say that to you all the time?
Every single day. Every single day without fail. Yeah.
Well, no wonder. You have millions and millions and millions of followers who must reach out a lot to tell you that what you're doing is really incredible.
Yeah, thank you. I get quite a bit of good feedback, especially compared to, I think, other people on the internet.
Yes, exactly. Can anyone be a troll on your account when you are doing the good work you're doing?
Yeah, you'd be surprised. People find a way, but it's normally the good outweighs the bad for sure.
Good. Let's talk about how all this good got started. You are someone who graduated from St. Mary's University in Halifax, and I'm dying to know how you went from your program to what you're doing in your life.
Right. So I actually was a stay-at-home mom doing online courses for my master's when COVID hit. So that kind of put a halt to everything because a lot of the programs I had to go into the school to do. So when that put a halt on everything and everybody was stuck at home and on lockdown, my routine was extremely disrupted. And I was diagnosed with ADHD at a very young age. So if you know anything about ADHD, once you're on a really good daily routine, if you disrupt that routine, it's not good. So
I was actually diagnosed at a really old age. I was not diagnosed.
That's normally how it happens.
So
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So my routine was really disrupted, and I found myself, kind of in that chaos of I was falling behind on everything at home. And it didn't quite make sense to me because, I'm at home all day. I shouldn't be behind on things at home. So it kind of clicked in my brain a little more. I mean, obviously, I have my psychology background. I knew that there was a huge correlation between mental health and cleaning. So I knew that, I had to get things back under control again. I had to, crack down on my cleaning and I ended up making a cleaning chart. And that's what started all of this, was a simple little chart that was ADHD friendly, was something different. I worked on a different room every day in my house just to kind of, mix it up a little bit so it wasn't so mundane and boring. And something clicked in my brain. And I thought, you know what, if I'm experiencing this from the disruption in my daily routine, somebody else is. So I posted a video about that online and it went viral overnight, just a simple cleaning schedule.
I'm curious, you've talked about psychology and doing your master's. Was it an MBA that you were working on?
Yeah. So my end goal was I actually wanted to do like hoarding specific therapies. So I wanted just to work with people with hoarding disorders. So that now I'm at the point where I don't know what I'm going to be doing because this has kind of derailed my entire path.
In the best possible way.
In the best possible way, yeah. But it's been 4 years now, and I just kind of stopped in the middle and haven't gone back again, and I don't know if I'm going to go back again. So I'm not sure what I'm going to end up doing.
So you were interested in hoarding before you were stuck at home during the pandemic?
Correct, yes. So when I first started in university, I knew that I wanted just to learn something about psychology in general, just because obviously I was, diagnosed at a young age with ADHD, and I really recognized that correlation between mental health and cleaning the more I got older. And by the time I hit university and I was studying psychology, that's when it really clicked for me. Being a full-time university student, working 2 jobs, and, my apartment looked like some of the houses that I clean now, right? So I recognized very quickly just how much that had an impact on my mental health and how I was doing in everyday life. So
let's talk about that correlation between, and it's not just cleanliness, but I think of it as messiness. Like my house, I don't think it's dirty. I keep it clean, but I am notoriously messy.
Right.
And part of it is if I see a pile on my desk, I won't try to clean it unless I know I can do it properly.
Right.
And sometimes when I feel like it's too much, it's just easier to block it out and walk away.
Yeah, a lot of the times people with ADHD have that perfectionism trait where if you can't do it all at once, there's no point in doing it at all.
That's me.
Which is normally when, people find things snowballing because they think, oh, that's going to take me 5 hours, so why bother spending 5 minutes on it a day and getting it done? It definitely, that goes hand in hand with ADHD for sure, yeah.
But you were also studying other conditions,
right,
like OCD, for instance.
Yes.
And what else is a foundation for hoarding?
A lot of the times, and I mean with a lot of the cases that I deal with daily now with my cleanings, I see a lot of, along with ADHD and neurodivergency, there is a lot of OCD, depression, and anxiety that comes along with it. Whether, it's caused by that or that's what caused it, I find it a really, a cyclic cycle where your lack of cleaning and organization or clutter or whatever it is leads to poor mental health, and then in turn your poor mental health leads to a lack of cleaning organization. So it's just kind of one of those cycles that it's very easy to get trapped in, and it's hard to kind of hop out of that cycle.
Wow, I'm hearing you, and I think so much of that has to do with this self-definition with a deficit, like I'm not enough because I can't do this.
Yes.
I really understand the basis of that sort of not enoughness that snowballs, as you say.
Yeah, it's hard. And I find most of the clients and the people that I deal with, they don't have that, self-love and self-confidence, and they think they're less than just because their places are messy, right? They tie their self-worth to the cleanliness of their home, which is, when you say it out loud, it sounds silly, but a lot of people, if their homes are not exactly picture perfect how they think in their mind their homes are supposed to look like, it's very quick that they get down on themselves and kind of start to doubt themselves overall.
A lot of therapists, really good therapists, have a background of struggle, a mental health struggle. And so they really know it. Do you identify with that?
It's funny that you say that. One of my favorite professors used to say that most people go into psychology because they want to fix their own brains, which I found very relatable because that was why I kind of went into psychology. I wanted to kind of just figure out why my brain worked the way it did so I could help myself and other people. And it just snowballed from there. And I feel like everything happens for a reason. And I'm in the place now that I'm supposed to be. And it was not planned. It just happened. But I'm just rolling with it day by day.
Well, let's roll back to the beginning of that path that you were on in social media.
Yeah.
You got a big reaction. And how did you start? Did you really start showing people how you were cleaning your own place?
Right. So when I had that first video just of my, ADHD-friendly cleaning chart go viral, that's when I realized what a huge need there was out there. Cleaning is a taboo subject, I find. It's something that, I don't think there's very many people out there who are perfect at cleaning, know how to clean everything, use what products, how to use them. It's not something that I find a lot of people are taught as children. It's very rare that you had a parent that, took you step by step on how to clean every single item in your home and what to use and how to use it. So I think it's a taboo subject. As an adult, you don't want to admit that you don't know how to clean something, or you can't clean something, or you can't keep up on cleaning. So especially as somebody, again, who is neurodivergent, it's a taboo subject. So I thought, the internet is an open space. It's a space that anybody can access, and there's obviously a need for open discussion about it. So kind of snowballed from there. I just kept making videos about easy cleaning tips and tricks and how-to videos, along with a nice mix of the mental health aspect and a lot of information that people can't, typically access or understand, or things that they didn't even know about themselves, right? It was an easy way to kind of start to share some knowledge and information that I had with the world.
And when was the first time you actually shared yourself and your ability to organize and clean with someone outside of your apartment? Who was your first client?
So the first person that I ever actually cleaned for, just for a quick backstory, when I grew on social media, I had, like you mentioned earlier, I must have a lot of people reaching out for help. I was getting hundreds of people a week asking me for help. And at that point, I wasn't even doing my cleanings. Wow. I was just posting about it. So I had a lot of people reaching out asking for help. I ended up fundraising to have companies go into these homes because they were all over the world. I couldn't access anybody, right? So I fundraised to have people go into these homes and clean them out. But I was getting met with a lot of rejections because the homes weren't your typical, Molly-made cleanup style. It was more so you needed a crime scene, kind of like a biohazard cleanup crew. And
Put up the police tape.
They cost a lot of money. I was getting, quotes between $20,000 and $40,000 for homes.
Wow.
So like I said, everything happens for a reason. I opened my email one morning and had an email from someone, and I recognized the name. And I don't think she knew who I was at first, but I recognized the name and I knew who she was. And one of her children was actually in my oldest son's class at school. And she had sent me photos in this email of what her home looked like. And I could picture this little boy in my head. I'm going to try not to cry. I could picture this little boy in my head, and I couldn't picture him living in this home.
Wow, that was very vulnerable of her.
It was. It really was. And I think, again, I don't think she knew that I knew who she was or who her children were. But it was definitely, I think it's vulnerable for anybody to reach out for help. I think it's very brave, and I'm very proud of anybody who actually takes that step. I think that's the biggest step, is to actually admit that you need help and ask for it, whether it's with cleaning or anything in life. I think just asking for help is, again, a taboo subject that people feel is wrong but should be right. So she reached out for help, and I could picture this little boy in my mind, and I couldn't get it out. And she said that Child Protective Services, somebody had called Child Protective Services on her, and they came in and looked at her home and gave her 2 weeks to clean it out, or they would be putting her children in foster care.
Brogan, wow.
Yeah. Now, I grew up, one of my best friends was in foster care and did not have a good experience in the foster care system. That's all I will say. So I could not imagine. She has 3 kids. So I knew, and they were all very separate in age. So I knew, they'd be being split up between different homes and taken away from their mom. And the mom had gotten in this situation because their father had passed away. So it was just a lot of loss and trauma for this family. And, she had mental and physical disabilities, so she couldn't do it on her own. It had snowballed to the point where it was a hoarding home.
So your heart as a mother must have just burst.
It shattered.
For her.
Yeah, it shattered, especially where I knew this little boy. I knew I had to do it. I knew I had to go over. So I actually showed up to her doorstep the very next day, and I spent 2 12-hour days cleaning her home out and completed it all. And I got to be there when her and her kids walked back in. And her 10-year-old daughter came running into the kitchen and opened the fridge door and started crying like it was Christmas morning, but the fridge was empty. And that's what broke me the most. I'm not gonna cry. I couldn't imagine being a 10-year-old kid and being so excited that you had an empty fridge. Because when I cleaned the fridge out, it had, there was a lot of rotten meat that had been in there for years. And I can't even explain the smell, and I had a respirator on. So knowing that children were living like that and that she was just mostly excited, that it was empty.
Apart from the 10-year-old's reaction, what was the reaction of that mom that I would guess has been sort of the rocket launcher for this whole endeavor?
She was very overwhelmed, I would say. There was a lot of tears. I think she was equally as happy as she was very embarrassed. I think
that you had been able to do it in 2 days.
I think that was what it was. But the most amazing thing is that was almost 4 years ago, and she still sends me monthly updates about how she's been doing and how she's been keeping up with it. And I mean, a lot of the times it doesn't always stay clean. It doesn't always stay the way it is. I've had to go back to some places a few times, but she has kept it just as spotless as the day I left. So it's my favorite story and my favorite cleaning.
And did she ask you, what am I going to pay you for this? How do you charge for this?
No, she knew in the beginning. That was one of the things that she said in her initial email was that, since her husband had passed away, they barely had any money. They were barely, staying afloat. She was majorly in debt, multiple different credit cards maxed out. I ended up actually buying them a grocery delivery after I had left because I cleaned out their entire fridge. I had to throw out everything that was in there. So she was definitely very thankful for that.
Okay, I am a little bit speechless, and that doesn't happen very much, but just the idea that you have such a generous spirit and that you just did that because it needed to be done. And I think at this moment in our world,
it's rare.
It's so important for us to hear these uplifting stories of people who are showing up for other people.
Yeah, I think it comes from my grandmother. I was raised by a very soft Scottish grandmother. My grandfather used to always say that she had way too big of a heart for her little body. Every time we'd walk down the street, she'd be pulling all the pocket money she had for anybody homeless or anybody begging. Or my grandfather used to get so upset with her and say she'd give the shirt off her back if she could. I definitely think I come by it honestly. I get it from her, but I don't think that, it's right to watch people suffer and struggle when you have the ability to help. It took 2 days of my time to change the entire life of a whole family, not just one person, right? Mm-hmm. To save kids from being taken away. I can't imagine what the world would be like if at least half the people out there did something like that. Not just cleaning, but just something in general to help another person out, right? That doesn't take anything away from them, but that's, like you said, the world that we're living in today, there's not a lot of that.
There's too much me and not enough we, and this is such an example of we, a true example of community and support, reaching out to help someone else. How did this experience, if it did, light a fire in you to say, oh, I know where I'm going to go next? Did it reveal the path?
Oh, 100% it did. When I walked into that cleaning, I thought that was the only time I would be doing that. I only agreed to it because I knew who these kids were. I didn't want them in the foster care system. I didn't want their lives disrupted any more than it already had been from losing their father, right? So that was just supposed to be a one-time thing. But
so much for that.
Between watching that little girl cry over an empty fridge and the other two kids run around, because they were all 10 and under. The 10-year-old was the oldest, right? So watching them run around their house, knowing that they weren't able to run around their house previously, and just watching the joy on these children's faces I had no choice. That was it. That was it for me. As soon as I saw that, it was, this is what you're doing now. There's nothing else that you're going to be doing for a very long time. So I knew that 100%.
And how did that translate to a blueprint?
Well, it just kind of happened. I had so many people reaching out for help before that anyways, that it was kind of easy to continue on that path. I just started going through all of my emails, and I do categorize my cleanings. So I kind of triage them almost like an emergency room where worst case scenario comes first. So if there's children in the home or elderly, they get top of the list. or if there's, a case of a potential eviction or somebody who's in the hospital. It's to the point now where I have not only CPS contacts me now for cleanings, but hospital workers, doctors, nurses, and even 311 is now referring people to me. Yeah.
Wow. So that's amazing. When there's a sense of urgency, that goes right to the top of the list. And when you started this, was it always going to be free, or did you think there would be some kind of fee originally?
It was always going to be free. One of the reasons why I decided to continue on doing it was so that I could bring light to this on social media, and I can kind of, show people that they can ask for help, that they're not alone, that there is help out there and there are people willing to help them. But also because I have some amazing companies who started to take notice of the work that I was doing. And I was actually being noticed before these cleanings. I already had companies wanting to sponsor me before these cleanings.
They came to you?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
But I never wanted to accept it. I thought it was silly to make money on social media, right? I'm sitting at home making little videos of myself doing something I'd already be doing, cleaning, right? So I never wanted to accept it. But that kind of was like, a way for me to use the funds that I was getting from these companies for good. So I was able to, take money from big corporations so that the little people who didn't have the money for something like this could, afford it. So I used all the money from them for cleaning supplies and dumpsters and PPE and groceries and anything new that they might need for their homes. So it was technically being paid for. The items and the things were being paid for by big companies and corporations, but the cleaning for the actual clients was free, always free. I've never accepted a single penny for any of my cleanings.
We couldn't share the great stories that we do here on the Canadian Love Map podcast without the amazing support of Charm Diamond Centers. They are Canada's largest family-owned jeweler, and they're proud to be putting love on the map. The folks at Charm Diamond Centers are thrilled to be a part of your love story. So visit charmdiamondcenters.com or one of your local stores. Love starts here. Most people, when they look at images of a hoarder's home, are, and I'm going to use this word because I think this is representative, disgusted.
Yeah.
They have this feeling of revulsion. And yet you are leaning in, you're running into the apartment rather than running out.
Yeah.
And most people would think, okay, it's bad enough to clean my mess, but to clean someone else's is really an act of extraordinary kindness.
Thank you. I think it's more so, I don't really notice the mess. I'm not sure if I'm desensitized at this point. A lot of people like to say that I'm desensitized because nothing bothers me or grosses me out, or I've dealt with it all at this point. But I look at a room and I see beauty. And that's a little silly to say or to hear because, I'm looking at a hoarder's house, but I see the beauty behind it and what it can be. And I know just how good it's going to feel for the people to walk back into their clean homes and these clients to kind of just experience that. I don't know if it's how many people I've got to see and experience coming back home like that, but I get more and more excited for every clean. You get to physically watch that weight lift off their shoulders. It's not just like a mental thing, it's a physical thing as well. You watch it when they walk back in.
Well, that's what I'm realizing in such a full way, that you may be giving them a physical space that is different, but you are giving them a mental and emotional and spiritual boost, really.
Well, it ties a lot back to psychology. There is an actual change in brain chemistry when you're living like that for so long. So when you're living with a lot of clutter and a lot of items around, even if you don't consciously realize it, your brain is subconsciously taking in every single article all the time. And it's registering it as unfinished business, chaos, mess. And your brain is structured to thrive under order and organization and not chaos. So it's actually triggering a low-grade fight or flight mode. in your brain.
Whether
you
a little bit with me, I have to
whether
tell
you consciously realize it or not.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's
very
why,
much.
if your home is, and we all have, again, it's different for everybody. We all have a preconceived notion and idea of what our homes are supposed to look like. Something that might be messy to one person could be immaculate to another person. So in your brain, you all have, everybody, it's different for everyone. You have this idea of what your home is supposed to look like.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not meeting those expectations, it's really, really easy for your brain to, start to say that you're failing in other aspects of life. And it makes very small things very difficult. So for a lot of people, it can affect them from making a simple phone call or doing a task that might take them 5 minutes to do, but they put it off forever because, I haven't done the laundry that's sitting in the corner. So why bother doing this? It just kind of rolls into other aspects of life as well that I don't think a lot of people realize.
It's like the clutter that is around them is also living inside them.
100%. It's cluttering their minds. And some people consciously realize it and they know, if I clean all this up, my brain is going to be cleaned up, basically. If I declutter physically, I'm decluttering mentally. And I've realized more and more with all the work that I've done and everything that I've learned, I consciously realize more just how much it affects me, which is kind of why I wanted to talk about it so much on the internet, because there's so many people that comment on my videos and message me saying that something simple that I said was like a light bulb moment for them, like an aha moment, like they finally realized why things are affecting them the way that they are. So that's one of the main reasons why I really wanted to share it on the internet so that people could also have access to this knowledge as well.
I want to ask you this, not as a voyeur, but basically as a way of helping people really understand the level of kindness that you are showing, and the need as well. What is one of the worst or most challenging cases? Most challenging is a better framing than worst.
I do have two. One was I never thought anything was going to beat it. I was contacted by a tenant in a building who I had actually previously cleaned for. And she said, I think the unit below me needs some help. She's about to be evicted. Now, this woman was in her 90s and had a daughter who was well aware of the situation and said she was unable to help. I had discovered that her mother had 4 cats in the apartment with no litter box. There was just a small pathway from one room to the other. Aside from that, it was garbage piled 5-6 feet in the air. And then I got to the bathroom, which is where I realized she had been hoarding and reusing toilet paper and sanitary pads for probably years. There was a whole shelving unit full of it because she didn't know when the next time she was going to be able to get out and get any more or her daughter was going to show up and bring her some. So that was the most heartbreaking for me, was watching someone live like that and know that, nothing was really being done for her or to help her. And I thought nothing would ever take the cake on that one. But about a month ago, I ended up on a free cleaning in London, England. And it wasn't my free cleaning. It was somebody over there who I had inspired, and they started doing this on their own out there.
Oh, isn't that great?
Because I guess the need for it in the UK is huge. So she started doing it out there about 6 months ago and had this job that she really needed my help with. So I contacted Scrub Daddy because they're great if I ever want to fly somewhere. They sponsor the flight, the hotels. If I'm going to do a free cleaning to help somebody, they are on board to help. So
Amazing.
I contacted them and they got me out there. And I didn't know much about this cleaning where it wasn't mine. I didn't have my thorough vetting process where I knew what I was walking into. And I had no idea what I was walking into.
I'm cringing a little bit.
Yeah. The owner that lived there, she hadn't left her home in 4 years. And I mean, had not stepped off the doorstep of her front door in 4 years. And she weighed just under 750 pounds and would spend days in a room. There was only 2 areas in the house that she could sit or lay down in. There was one small section in the living room and then a pathway through to a cot in the corner of her bedroom. Yeah, it was very taxing. It was a lot. It was physically and mentally hard to do. I think that was the first cleaning that I ever stopped halfway through and wasn't sure if I was going to be able to finish.
I don't mean this as a pun, but I think that must have, the heaviness of the situation must have really weighed on you.
Oh, 100%. It was so much more mental than physical. There was 4 of us there doing it, and it was, one of those things where we all just kept each other going, because I normally do these cleanings on my own. Every once in a while, I'll bring one other person with me. If it hadn't have been the 4 of us, none of us would have made it through it.
Yeah.
It was a lot to mentally and physically kind of. You can't prepare yourself for something like that, to experience something like that. But we got it done, and I'm so glad we did, because she came back in, and it was just the most beautiful thing to witness. And she ended up telling us that if we hadn't have answered her and hadn't have come done that she had plans to no longer be here for Christmas, and actually had written out instructions for someone to take care of her cat and how to take care of her cat. And we ended up, this was the first weekend of December. So she wouldn't, if we hadn't have gone when we went, she wouldn't have made it within a few weeks, right? So that's kind of why I do what I do. You never know whose life you're saving or whose life you're changing just by, again, a few days of my time and hard work.
So you inspired this woman in the UK. How many other people have become little satellites?
There's a few that have reached out to me that, they've just kind of said, I love what you do. Would you mind if I start it in my area? And I always say the more the merrier, right? If somebody wants to help somebody else, I think it's incredible. I do have a couple of videos out there just to show people how to get started and how important it is to, take biohazard courses, because you never know what you're going to come across. As we know, you never know what you're going to come across, and how to deal with it and how to handle things. I always tell them, get proper PPE. You need to protect yourself. And on top of that, you need insurance. That's what I think a lot of people don't realize, is you need to have that insurance to protect yourself and the home in case anything happens while you're there, right?
Right.
So,
but it seems to me, Brogan, that one of the things that you didn't mention just there in terms of your preparation going into these situations is something that you do have, which is the psychological preparation,
right?
And the sensitivity because of your past, your schooling, everything, that sensitivity to really hold space for people.
Yes, I think that, anybody who wants to help somebody like that and get in that kind of line of work, I feel like they would already have that kind of sensitivity and lack of judgment and lots of compassion. That's something that can't be taught. That's something I think you're innately born with, and you're either raised with, or you have it or you don't have it. But when it does come to the psychology background, that is something that I think does give me a fair advantage. I think it makes people a lot more comfortable in reaching out to me, knowing that not only do I have that care and compassion and lack of judgment, but I do have that knowledge where I truly understand the psychological aspect of where it comes from and how it happens, and that it's not just a choice. I don't like the word lazy or laziness. I believe it to be a word that shouldn't even exist. But I think people just truly think other people believe that they're lazy, or that they just don't care, or they don't want to do it, when their brains aren't actually letting them do it. So there's a very big difference.
So this endeavor has taken you to the UK. Where else have you traveled?
So it's actually funny that you say that. Up until 3 years ago, I'd only ever been on a plane twice in my life. I went to Florida when I was 4 years old, which I don't remember. And I took a very quick plane ride to Montreal when I was 18, and that was it.
Really?
And in the last 3 years, I have been to North Carolina. I go to Philly and New Jersey once a month now. I've been to Las Vegas, London a few times. I've been to Paris. I actually did a cleaning in Paris. So it's taken me all over. It's pretty crazy. I'm going to be going to Hungary this year. It's pretty nuts.
And apart from the travel, which I think is fabulous, what do you get out of this? What is the greatest gift that you get out of what you're doing?
Well, what I love the most is that ever since I was a little girl, I always knew in one form or another I wanted to help people. which is why I obviously went into psychology. I wanted to be able to help others. And one thing that kind of always stuck with me was, in psychology, if I was to go into being a therapist and, giving therapy sessions every day, it was always in the back of my mind, how many people would I really be helping? And being able to do this is so fulfilling because not only do I get to help so many people with the cleanings, but I get to help millions of people who are watching. Because whether they, need to hear my story or they need to, feel like they're not alone or they can reach out for help or they have those light bulb moments where something clicks and makes sense to them and they feel better about themselves. Or on the other hand, where there's people who are those folks who are judgmental and think these people are, lazy or disgusting or anything like that. I've had so many people turn around and say, you've made me look at this differently, or you've shown me that, this is mental, like this is mental health that we're talking about. It's not a choice. And being able to see both sides of it is so beautiful, and just know that I have kind of touched so many people around the world. It's definitely the most fulfilling. I never thought in a million years I'd be able to help or reach that many people.
I think TikTok is your biggest platform.
Correct, yes.
How many followers do you have now?
6.3 million on TikTok.
Is that all? Does that just blow your mind?
It's pretty crazy. Actually, I'm currently writing a book, and my book agent came to me the other day and he had tallied it all up and he said, you have over 10 million cross-platform followers. And I had never thought about it. I never, thought about how many it all added up to be. And he said that the other day. And I was like, that's insane that I have that much reach to that many people and that many people care about what I have to say and what I do. It's mind-blowing. It's very surreal.
Well, with all the dirt and clutter out there on the internet, to have someone like you getting to take up space and, as you say, educating people and inspiring them, I think that is just such a thing of beauty. I'm so moved by what you're doing. Like, I really think it's extraordinary.
Thank you.
And I love the fact that when you are talking to those 10 million people, it's really like you're just talking to one. And that may be your greatest secret, that you have that common touch where it feels like, oh, she's talking to me. Can you give us any, I feel like we shouldn't wrap up without maybe some tips, or I just want to glean some of your wisdom, glean some cleaning wisdom or tidying wisdom. What are the, top 3 things you tell people or you would like to share now with people that, they can do to try to break themselves out of the rut?
Yes. So the very first thing that I always tell anybody, if you're struggling, it has less to do with cleaning and more to do with mental health. But I really would wish that people would stop tying their self-worth to the cleanliness of their home and realize that the two have nothing to do with each other. That just because you may have a messy home in your eyes does not make you a bad person or make you an unworthy person. You are still worthy of everything good in the world as anybody else, any other human being. And that's definitely the biggest one.
Well said.
Yeah. The second is, like we discussed earlier, when you look at something and you think, oh, I'm not going to do that because it's going to take me forever and I'm not going to be able to do it perfectly. Doing a little bit imperfectly is better than doing nothing at all. So if you just take 5 minutes to just do a couple of tiny little things without finishing the entire job, eventually you will see that add up.
I'm going to spend 15 minutes
there
in
you
my
go.
Office today.
There you
decluttering.
go.
Okay, yes.
That's
and
the
number
goal
3.
is to, inspire, is to motivate as well. The third is kind of like the second, but it has to do with habits. So it's the same as, not doing something perfectly and doing it for 5 minutes, even if it's going to be imperfect. It's the same as habits. People normally don't create the small habits because they feel like if they can't change everything at once, why bother? But it's actually those little habits that you make every day that will end up growing and coming into something bigger. And eventually you will see that progress. It's just those baby steps that are important.
I love the fact that all 3 of those have psychological roots.
Yes.
They're not just practical. And I want to go to your roots for a second. You talked about your grandmother who had such a kind heart. What was her name?
Josephine.
Josephine. Oh my goodness, tip of the hat to her. And if one of your kids is someday on a podcast talking about their mom, what would you hope they'd say?
That will make me cry. One of the main reasons why I do what I do is so that, my kids can be proud. And one thing that I always wanted to instill in them is to help other people. One of the main reasons why I do what I do is because if my children ever experience something wrong in their lives, or if they ever need a hand with anything in general, I would just hope that there's someone there to help them with whatever they need. So that's one thing that I always want them to kind of grow up and remember that, you can't do everything on your own. Sometimes you're going to need help, and that's okay. You have to be open and willing to accept and ask for help sometimes. So,
what do you think your kids think about all this?
Well, my oldest thinks it's, the coolest thing ever. He likes to tell all of his friends all about me. And, in this age, there's, so many kids out there who are obsessed with YouTube. So all of his little friends follow me. And every time I pick him up from school, they're all yelling that I'm the best cleaner. It's pretty funny. I always ask them what they think about it. And my oldest, who is 9, almost 10, actually watches some of the videos. And they always ask me if they can come to the cleanings with me because they want to help as well. So I think it's all in mindset. I think things are inherently taught, and kids are taught things. And I feel like they're just so young and innocent and kind when they're small like that. And it's all about how you nurture and help them grow those habits. So they think it's pretty cool what mom does.
Oh my goodness. I think of it as creating a core in a human being of kindness. And when they're young, that core is pliable, and you get to, really help determine.
Just kind of feed and grow. It's almost like a plant.
Yeah. And that you are, I didn't think about kids watching your posts, that, you're not just helping people reverse their habits and helping people not be and helping people go from being judgmental to understanding, but you're setting the table for young people to actually be compassionate and clean. I said it before, it's extraordinary. And I have no other word. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for having me here.
Thanks so much for listening to the Canadian Love Map. This podcast is presented and made possible by Charm Diamond Centers. It's hosted by me, Nancy Regan, and is produced and distributed by Podstarter. We love sharing love stories of all kinds, and that could include yours. So do you or someone you know have an uplifting tale to tell? Reach out to us on Facebook or Instagram using @CanadianLoveMap or email producer@podstarter.io. We'll be back next week with another love story to add to the map.
You've been listening to a Podstarter production.